Welcome to Destination Geography. This is a course consisting of numerous classes that's going to be talking about the world from a tourist, a traveler's perspective and point of view. We're going to cover every country in the world, covering basically what to see, how long to stay, how to travel, when to go, and what not to do in some cases. And we also will end up talking about even some of the hotels you may want to consider, different properties and things like that. I'm Jerry Fuller, or Gerald Fuller, and they've asked me to teach the class because of my, I guess, relatively extensive travel background. And much of the information I will be giving to you will be from experiences that I've had and other friends that I have. And so as a result, I want to start out by just talking about a few things that are basic in traveling. For example, if you go international, you will need a passport. A passport is proof of your residency or citizenship. In other words, if you live in the United States and are a U.S. citizen, you must get a U.S. passport, and they will look at it when you get to another country. But important is they look at it when you come back to prove that you are an American citizen. And that way they can let you in the country easier. Also, I've got to mention to you visas. Now, passport proves you're a citizen of a country. A visa allows you to go to a country, allows them to allow you in. Many countries don't really have a visa. Well, they sort of do. Much of Europe, you don't need a written visa before you get over there. They just stamp it when you get there, give you 90 days to tour, whatever. Each country is different, but you don't need to do anything ahead of time. But going to Europe, you have to do some other things ahead of time. But on the visa part, you don't. But some countries, if you go and you go there, if they allow you even get on the plane, and you don't have the visa, chances are very good that you'll get on the next plane out of the country at your expense. So there's passports and visas, and it's important that you check with the countries you're going to if you need the visa, because that depends and determines exactly if you get in or not. Another thing I want to talk to you about are drugs. Now, there are two kinds of drugs. There's your medication drugs that your doctor prescribed to you, and then there are drugs that are illegal. Let's talk about the prescription drugs. If you have to take a needle, for example, like diabetes, and you have to take a big supply of medication, it's very important that you call the embassy of the country or countries you're going to and tell them your situation, that this is something you must have because your doctor requires it. They probably will require you to get a statement from your doctor, a letter, stating that you must have this and how many you're taking. How many pills, how many whatever you need to do. The drug one, some countries are not as critical, but I just wouldn't touch it at all if I were traveling outside the U.S. Don't touch any illegal drug, as we call them, because you never know. But some countries, you can die. They can throw you in prison for the rest of your life, or they'll execute you if you have them. So do not get involved with illegal drugs. It's just not worth it for you. Another thing I want to talk to you about are lodging, about the hotel. We will talk about sometimes about different hotel properties by name and to give you an idea of what you can do with them. But is my philosophy, total philosophy, is that get the hotel that is the best hotel to stay there for what you want to do. In other words, if you're going to spend most of your time around the Eiffel Tower, in Paris, get a hotel that's right near the Eiffel Tower. Get a room that has a balcony, preferably, where you look right out at the Eiffel Tower. That's why you went. Or you were going to some beautiful area, a beach, get a room overlooking the beach. I mean, yes, they're more expensive, but it enhances the trip tremendously. Then you overlook an alley about 5 blocks from the beach. It's important for the whole idea of traveling. I firmly believe that get the full benefit that you can every time you go somewhere. Also, I want to talk a little bit about the definition of hotels and lodging. A hotel, we all know hotels. The rooms in the big, big building as a rule, usually a restaurant there, usually a gym. They're usually in cities. Then you have motels. Motels are usually no more than 3 stories high, usually 1 or 2. And you drive up, you park right near in front of your room and stay there. They're mainly designed for people that are doing traveling, just a one-night stop. And it's not so critical with motels as hotels where you stay. But do get one that's clean and pretty decent, preferably one that even has a restaurant. Then we have like B&Bs. Many people love B&Bs. Airbnb has made a fortune. Now they're not the same as a B&B, is where you get a room or apartment or something like that, and there's no cook or anything. It's just furnished, and you do whatever you want to do. But the B&Bs are places you stay that is somebody's house, usually. And they'll serve you breakfast in the morning, and many people love them. My sister just loves them. She and her husband stay in Airbnbs and B&Bs because they really love it. They say get to know the local people. I try never to stay in them because I want the total freedom of coming and going when I want and not feeling like I'm going to wake somebody up. And I don't want to have a place that has a kitchen in it. I don't want to feel like I need to cook. I'm on vacation and I don't want to go cooking. So I rarely stay in B&Bs, and there's no other option. We were going between Dushanbe and over to Osh, and we had to stay in B&Bs because there were really no hotels. And they were interesting, but we had 5 days where we didn't dare shower because the bathrooms are so awful. But check them all out, whatever you want. There's nothing right or wrong. If you're out in the country somewhere in the mountains, stay in lodges that have great views of where you are. So there's a wide variety, but be conscious of where you stay. It can make or break your entire trip. Now, I want to talk to you about a couple of terms and definitions. The lapse rate, LAPSE, lapse. Now, the lapse rate basically says that for every mile you go up from sea level, the temperature drops 3.5 degrees. If some of you, like I live in Sacramento, it's 25 feet elevation basically. But just an hour drive away approximately is Truckee, which is in the Sierra Nevadas. It's about 7,000 feet, and it's colder up there. I mean, we will get rain in the winter, and it's maybe 50 degrees, but up there they're getting feet of snow, and it's cold because elevation raises the temperature, and as you go down, as you go up, it gets colder, and as you go down, it gets warmer. So that is important to know. I need to talk to you a little bit about centigrade and Celsius. In the US, we use Fahrenheit, but most of the world, in fact, I think all of the world that I can think of, uses Celsius or centigrade. They're basically the same thing, but you will say something is 20 degrees Celsius, or you can say it's 20 degrees centigrade. Each country sort of emphasizes one of those words more than the other, but they're basically exactly the same meaning. And it's like 40 degrees centigrade or Celsius is hot. It's more like 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But my favorite temperature traveling is around 20 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, and it's about 70 degrees. So depending on where you're going, but there's scales you can look up the difference to compare a different Fahrenheit to Celsius and vice versa. So you need to know that word. Let's see, something else. Oh, you need to know about water, drinking water, and also the ocean water or lake water. Drinking water in most of the countries in Europe and most of the countries in lots of Central America and US they will have water that you can drink. But in Central America, you must be very careful, because I've been very sick sometimes, even in five-star hotels, that I've drunk water out of their pitcher in the third world countries, thinking a five-star hotel would have good water, and I've been so sick. So always make sure that when you're in a third world country, or in a country that might even be second world, parts of Europe, that if people are drinking bottled water, you drink bottled water. But make sure that you open the cap yourself, because you want to hear it go pop. Or if they bring it to you, tell the waiter, open it in front of me, because I want to make sure, because it's not uncommon for them to reuse those bottles and just put the lid on and bring it to you and do it. But if you don't hear it pop, it means it's probably been filled up with dirty water. Okay. There's a lot of things you can talk about on that kind of thing. That well, you do know that along the ocean, it's a different temperature than you go like 15, 20 miles inland. It can really change. It's usually cooler and colder along the ocean. And as you go inland, it can be much warmer, 20, 30 degrees warmer. Like San Francisco, it can be very, very cool. But you go 15, 20 miles inland, and it's 20, 30 degrees hotter. And it's that way basically all over the world. I want to talk to you about mountains also. I talked about the lapse rate, which is every 1,000 feet you go up, the temperature drops 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's not always true. There are things that will change it a bit, but it will be cooler. So keep that in mind. And I know I always take a light jacket or a sweater at least, in case I'm going to be spending some time in the mountains. Now, we want to talk about continents and the oceans. Depends on who you talk to. There are either 6 or 7 continents. Now, the general definition of a continent, although it's not true, always true, but it basically is a large body, a big property of land, big area of land that is surrounded by water. One of the examples, of course, is Australia. It's a big body of land and it's surrounded by water. And it's basically true with North America, which is here. North America starts at Panama. Right there, when it touches Colombia, it changes North to South America. And it's basically surrounded by water. But there's a little bit of stretch there that we go through on the Panama Canal and the Darien Pass that keeps it from being totally surrounded. And Africa is totally surrounded, and Europe is not, and neither is Russia, because there's the Ural Mountains that separate the two. The Ural Mountains are right about here, and they separate. There's Europe and there's Asia. But look how much of Russia is in Europe and how much of Russia is in Asia. It's a big country. And so you need to know that nowadays, most people are saying Eurasia. The continent is Eurasia because it's not surrounded by water at all. But if you say Eurasia, it is surrounded by water. And they just combine that as one continent. And depending on what the definition, it could be true or not. Now, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about people. You may have heard the term Polynesia, and we have a tendency here in the mainland U.S. to say Polynesians are everybody that live in the Pacific Ocean, like French Polynesia and Fiji, and on and on, Samoa, all these different places. We just call them Polynesian. But there are 3 Nesias, as I call them. There's Polynesia, there's Micronesia, and there's Melanesia. And they are very different people, similar lifestyle, because they're all desert and tropical islands, and they're really neat, but they're different people. Now let's start with Polynesia. Now Polynesia is a big area. It goes from the Hawaiian Islands down to French Polynesia, which is about here, over to Fiji, which is over here, Fiji. So there's a line down here from Hawaii to Fiji, Fiji to French Polynesia, and up there back to Hawaii. Now that is a big triangle, and there are a lot of islands in there, but they're all Polynesian with the exception of Fiji. Fiji is Melanesian. And as a result, we'll talk about them right now. Now, who are the Melanesians? The Melanesians live here. I guess that's good enough. Here, they live from Fiji over here to Papua New Guinea. This island, the island is basically New Guinea, and it consists of two countries, Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. But all these islands here are Melanesians. I lie to you. Polynesia goes from Hawaii down to New Zealand to French Polynesia to Tahiti, and up back to Hawaii. And every island in between there is Polynesian, except Fiji. And Fiji is Melanesian. And so what Polynesians, poly means many, and that's a lot of islands, just many, many islands. As you travel Polynesia, there's just thousands of them, it seems like. And then the Melanesian means black. Mela is black, and means the people are black. And the people in Melanesia are black. They're not African black, the Melanesian black, and they're very different. Well, I won't go into the major differences, but they're very different. Their genetics, everything is different. As a result, you'll see black people and you'll think they're African black, but they're not. They're Melanesian. So as a result, that's Melanesia. Now we have another place called Micronesia. Micro means little or small. It consists of many, many small islands. Many of them are not populated. But it basically starts over here near Saipan. See, where are we? Okay, Saipan starts up in here, and it goes down to Guam, and all of the islands that go bopping across here until you get through Micronesia. And all the islands there are Micronesian. And where I think they came from is a combination of Asian and Polynesian. Because the Polynesians used their boats and they sailed all over the place. They went all the time. And they made to Asia, and I think they intermarried, and as they dropped off of shipwrecks or whatever, they populated those. I won't swear to that, but when you go there and see the cultures and see how they live, you can see a lot of the Polynesian in them. So that is the three terms. So don't go to that part of the world and call everybody a Polynesian. Just realize that there are different peoples there. And now we need to talk about hemispheres. There are 4 hemispheres. We really think about 2 of them, northern and southern. Now, the hemispheres, north and south, are divided by a thing called the equator. And the equator goes right here, all the way around the world, about the middle of the world. And everything above it is the northern hemisphere, and everything below it is the southern hemisphere. And that's really important to know as we go through this course. And we'll talk about that again in detail. And then we have Eastern Hemisphere and Western Hemisphere. Now, Eastern Hemisphere is all of this. That's the Eastern Hemisphere. The Western Hemisphere is North and South America. All of this is Western Hemisphere. And what's interesting, are you ready for this? Greenland is in the Western Hemisphere, and Iceland is in the Eastern Hemisphere. This belongs to Europe, and it's called European, but don't ever say Greenland is European because it's part of the Western Hemisphere. It's not part of Europe. Government-wise, politically it is, but physically it's part of North America. Isn't that weird? Now, this is a part that all of you that have traveled on long distance will recognize. If you ever fly, let's say from Hong Kong nonstop to Los Angeles, it's about a 14-hour flight, and you board over there, hot and humid, in Hong Kong, and then you fly nonstop over to Los Angeles, where it's hot and a little humid. But what happens is several things have happened to you. Number one, you have crossed the international date line. And international date line sort of goes, it goes right here, and then you can't see it anymore. It's right about that line. Then we go over here where you can see it. It goes up and down here, and all of this is in another day. Well, what happens is we say GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, and we've been using that for decades. It is a town on the Thames River, just outside of London, where this machine, the observatory, is located in the building, and that is controlling time. Well, that's not true anymore. I don't remember, maybe it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. New Year's changed, the next day at midnight, and they said it is something like 12:01 or 12:02 UTC time. I thought, what? What is UTC time? I'd never heard of it. And so I called the Greenwich Observatory in London, outside of London, and I asked him, what is this UTC? And they said, well, we have been the control of time forever, but we're not accurate anymore. The UTC, some call it the UTC, I've called UTC, or CUT, Coordinated Time. And he said, that's the correct time now. And I said, really? Where is it? He said, oh, it's outside of London, not too far from Orly Airport. And I said, really? I mean Charles de Gaulle Airport, not far from there. I said, really? And so I flew over there to Paris a few days later and went over there, and I said, are you the actual real time? They said, yep. And so you'll see both of them. You'll see GMT, which is in England, and you'll see either UTC or the CUT, and UTC, which is a coordinated time, consolidated coordinate. I can't talk. It's the coordinated universal time, and that's out of France, in Paris. So you need to know about that, because if you see it, you won't think what in the world is going on. And it's been maybe 35 years ago. I can't remember, but it's been a while. Now, there are some things that we need to talk about. Is, how do I explain this? Well, what I'm going to tell you is not totally true. Some of it is a partial lie, but the reason I'm telling you this is because the reality of it, as human beings traveling as tourists and visitors to areas, this will be true, but I tell you. So try to remember there's a little bit not truth to it, but as far as we are concerned, it's true. For example, have any of you ever poked your toe in the water of Los Angeles? You go out to the ocean, and they're famous for the beach and surfing and all that stuff. Have you ever gone out there? What's the water temperature? Can you stay in it all day long? Can you stay in it all day long? Yeah. Okay, my students haven't done that. Oh, they're smart, because you have to wear a wetsuit or something. It's cold water in Los Angeles. You think it's wonderful beaches, it's sunny in this LA, but it's cold water. Now, if any of you have gone to Miami and poked your toe in Miami water, the water is much warmer there. And you can stay in there all day if you want. And you have to ask the question, why? Why? Well, let me give you another problem. If you go to Cape Town, South Africa, right here, and you poke your toe in the water there, is it going to be cold or is it going to be warm? Right, there's Cape Town. And if you poke your toe in there, it's cold or warm. Do some thinking of it because I'm going to tell you how you can tell. All right. We'll start with some things that you already know. One of them is the word clockwise. Many of the younger kids, people don't know it because they know digital. But clockwise is if you have a clock with numbers on it, it goes clockwise. It goes around like this. And so we don't have to think about that. As a result, this will be the first step. Okay, we have around the middle of the world, right here, is the equator. What's the weather like around the equator? It's usually hot, humid, you can call it hell, whatever you want, because it's usually miserable. But do you know there are things right near the equator that are freezing, they snow. I mean, you could, for example, you can go climb Kilimanjaro. See, here's the equator bopping around. Okay? Wait, here it is. Bopping around. And here is the Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa. And it's just a little bit, it's probably 200 miles maybe south of the equator. But when you get to the 19,000 foot level of that thing, it's colder than sin. And it's right basically on the equator. Also with the Mount Kinabalu. Kinabalu is in Malaysia. It's in Sabah. It's over here. And it goes right here is the equator. So it's a little bit above it. But up there is freezing. It can be 95 degrees, 100% humidity down at the base. But when you get to the top, it could easily be 18 degrees. Colder than sin. So as a result, there again is the lapse rate. Starting down and you go up, and it gets colder. So I'm going to tell you how you can tell the water temperature of about any ocean, a beach in the world. Remember the word clockwise. Above the equator, the water goes clockwise. So just like this. Okay? Every body of water does that. Now we said it's very hot around the equator, so the water on the equator is warm. I don't know of any exception to that. It's warm and hot. That's why the Caribbean water is so fabulous. And so it goes up here. Miami is still pretty warm. This up here is not too bad. This up here gets colder because we're getting up into Greenland. The people pay a lot of money to see these ice, this massive amount of ice. Comes down here. If you've ever swum in any of these oceans, right through here, at the beaches, it's cold. It's cold. You don't go in there unless you have a wetsuit. And then you come on down. This area is it's starting to get warmer. You come on down to the equator, and it stays warm. It gets cold again, and as you go up, and so it stays cold, come on down, cooler, cooler, warmer, then hot. It goes like that, not to the equator. So anything you say, how far from the equator is it? If it's near the equator, the water is going to be warm. You can go swimming all day long. Then as you go up, the water gets colder. And it will be cold, really cold when it's all these icebergs and stuff up there in Greenland. And then it comes bopping around down here and it's really cold. And you don't see a lot of people swimming in Bath and other different places. No, not Bath. Brighton. Over here, they go out there and they think it's cute, but it's cold. But they wear a lot of clothes. Now, you've got the oceans. Now, below the equator is where we have to think, because the term is counterclockwise. So south of the equator, the water goes counterclockwise, just the opposite direction. And if you've ever gone to Brazil, I mean, the water here is bathtub warm, because it's right there at the equator. It's south. And you come down, it's Rio de Janeiro, very warm beaches. Keep coming on down. It gets colder and colder and colder. You go by Antarctica, it freezes up, and then you come back up to Africa. So if anybody asks you what is the water temperature in Cape Town, South Africa, can you go there and go swimming all day long? What do you think? It's counterclockwise. It's going to go this way where it gets warm, stays warm, then it cools off, then it freezes with the icebergs, then it comes up. So Cape Town water is cold, very cold. And you can't stay in it all day, maybe 1 minute, but it's cold. But just about 30 miles away, you head over to the east and you come to this beach where the water is warm. You can stay in there and swim and frolic around. The reason why, there's the Indian Ocean. Now the Indian Ocean does this. It doesn't go down to Antarctica. It just stays right here. So it doesn't get cold. So the water over here, just cross over, is very warm because it's coming from the equator and it just stays here. It doesn't go down to get cold enough. Madagascar water is fabulous. And you come over here to this part. But then when you get farther down here, that's all warm. Come over here and you get to Perth, Australia, to Fremantle Beach, over here, or to Scarborough Beach, over here, it's just coming from Antarctica and it's colder than sin. So the beaches, until you get about here, are very, very cold to swim in. Then they warm up on the equator again and continue around over here. So that is how you can determine if the water is cold or hot. Now, we have seas. Well, let's take the Mediterranean first. The Mediterranean is a famous sea, and it's right here. Now see, here's the equator, and here's that. Now see, that water turns what direction? Is going clockwise, just like here. It goes clockwise. So it never goes up there to get cold. Doesn't bring this water in very much. It's only a little bitty opening, and the water stays very warm year-round. The same in the Black Sea, very warm water. And the same with the Caspian. And all of these seas, well, most of them are, as long as they're landlocked and they're up here, they're warm. Like you can go to the Coral Sea in Asia, out of Vietnam in that area, and this bathtub warm. Well, all this water here is just bathtub warm because right around the equator, and this part's going this way, and this part's going that way. But it doesn't go down there to get cold, so it's very warm. So you know the water of any place you're going. We need to talk about mountains. We talked a little bit about it with the lapse rate. But the thing that you really need to understand is it really plays havoc with you in the Caribbean. The Caribbean, we've all heard the Caribbean. Some say Caribbean. But if you really want to be a snob, if you really want to act like, well, I've been somewhere exciting, you can say you've been to the Antilles. I think that sounds more exciting. I just got back from the Antilles. It sounds like you really went somewhere exciting, doesn't it? And people say, where's the Antilles? The Antilles is another word for Caribbean. And so you can say I went to the Caribbean or I went to the Antilles. There's the Greater Antilles and the Lesser Antilles. There's the Greater Caribbean and the Greater Lesser Islands in the Caribbean. Now, you may have heard that I went to the Lesser Islands in the Caribbean. Does that mean they're not worth going to? Does that mean there's a bunch of junk? No, it just means they're lesser part of it. They're smaller islands. There are 4 big islands that's called the Greater Antilles or the Greater Caribbean Islands. And, wrong way. The ones that are the greater is Cuba, because it's a big island, massive island, and is Jamaica, the Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico. Hispaniola is 2 countries. On the west side is Haiti, on the right side is Dominican Republic. But it's on the island of Hispaniola. So it is it's a big island. And later on we'll talk about those countries there. But those are the Greater Antilles. and the everything else are the Lesser Antilles. I mean, some of these islands, like Cuba, they're so big you can put almost all the many of the Lesser Antilles islands in it and still have room. So, anything else we need to carry on that you? Oh, yes, we need to talk about time. And we talked a little bit about it going from Hong Kong to Los Angeles nonstop. But on time, and we talked a little bit about it with the GMT UTC, that time starts somewhere. I guess now it's out of Paris with the UTC, and they call that the meridian of time. It means that's where it begins, and that's where it ends. So it goes here. Now, what shape is the world in? And I don't mean politically or economically, just in the shape of it. Well, it's basically a globe, basically round. And basically what happens is around the equator, goes this way, and then it, every 15 degrees that it goes this way, right here we are at the center of time, you go 15 degrees and it loses an hour. It loses an hour. Every 15 degrees you go, it loses an hour until it gets to the international date line, which you talked about over here and over here. And as a result, that's where time bumps into each other. Because if, let's say it's 12 noon here, and every 15 degrees, because there's 360 degrees in a circle, and 15 degrees would make it 24 hours. So you keep going around there, and it's 12 noon here, and you keep subtracting, and it's 12 midnight over there. The same day, 12 midnight over there. But something happens when you cross that line. In the old days, when I first started traveling, they would give you a certificate on the plane that you crossed the international date line at this time. Pan Am and several other carriers would give you, pass them around, said you signed by the captain and co-captain, the co-pilot, and they would say you crossed the international date line at this time. They'd also do the same thing when you cross the equator. You cross the equator this day, this time. They don't do it anymore because billions of people cross these things every day. But in those days, in the 50s and early 60s, nobody ever did it. Very rare. So you get there at the date line. Now what happens? Remember, we subtracted that way. As you go 15 degrees this way, you add. So let's say we do it on a Wednesday. So Wednesday, it's noon. We keep subtracting, and then it hits midnight of, well, the morning of Wednesday, or midnight where Wednesday starts, right there. But what is happening is we're going the other direction, this way, and every 15 degrees, we add an hour. So it's midnight Wednesday here in, I guess now, France. Well, it's not France. You have to say at UTC, because sometimes, well, we won't go into that right now. But basically, you say UTC time is 12 noon on Wednesday. You add hours, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., until you get to the international date line. And then it becomes midnight on, we're going to go into Thursday. And over here, going that way, it's going to be Wednesday, go back into Tuesday. But it doesn't go to Tuesday, it goes to Thursday, because you just crossed the date line. And you added 12 hours going this way, you subtracted 12 going that way. So this is the fun thing about crossing the date line. We don't care about it, really, except it throws havoc in you. When you go like from Hong Kong to LA, nonstop, and 14 hours, two things basically happen to you. You get home here in the States, and you become wide awake at midnight, and you're very tired at noon, because you're off that about what, probably 20-something hours, not quite. You're off for a lot of hours, and it's because you change dates. I mean, I still don't understand it, and I've done it many, many, many times. How can you leave Sydney, Australia, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, let's say Wednesday, and you arrive in Los Angeles at 10 a.m. Wednesday, 4 hours before you left Sydney? How can that happen? I mean, it still baffles me. I try not to think about it. I just put my watch to 10 a.m. on Wednesday and don't think about it. I'll go insane. You just lost, well, you get to live 4 more hours because you cross the date line. And when you go the other way, if you leave, let's say, 10 p.m. on Wednesday in Los Angeles, and you fly for 15 hours going that way, you will get there on Friday morning. You don't even live on Thursday because you crossed the date line, because you lost and gained 24 hours when you cross it. So it's amazing. Just never ceases to amaze me how bizarre that is. But that's what you do. We won't go into daylight. Oh, but I want to tell you one thing about the date line. I hope this map shows it adequately. Oh, it does. Now, the date line, we think, goes around the world, and it stops right there in the Pacific. It goes between Alaska and Russia up here. They kind of bopping down. But there's a country called Kiribati. It's right over here. And Kiribati is big. Kiribati is how it's spelled. Kiribati. But they say something like Kiribati. Anyway, but there's an island over here that is called Christmas Island. Christmas Island is right over here. And that's part of Kiribati. So what they did, and this would be another day. So let's say it's over here, and on that side of the date line, it's Wednesday. Well, it's Monday over here. It's Tuesday over here. So, I mean, they got sick of it. So what they did is they just bended the date line. The date line was going this way, and they just moved it over here, met Kiribati, and goes back and continues down. So you can do whatever you want with the date line and time zone. Did you shut that? They, lo and behold, there are a lot of countries that do all kinds of things with time. India has a time zone that goes right down the middle of India. That right there. Right down there. So this side would be 10 a.m. and that side would be 9 a.m. Well, India said, we can't live like that. So they just changed it and made it 9:30. Half an hour added to this side and half an hour subtracted from this side. So you go there and you have to set your watch and half an hour more if you're coming this way, or subtract half an hour if you go this way. And the same in Australia. This part of Australia has one time, and Perth is an hour and a half behind Adelaide. So they just add half an hour when you go. I mean, it's very strange. Any law can be bent, I guess, particularly in this kind of thing. And so as a result, you need to know that about the time. I also want to talk to you about the 24-hour clock. Many of you know this. In America, we call it military time, but the rest of the world doesn't call it that. They just call it the 24-hour clock. In other words, and this is important that you do it right, okay? Very important. Okay, let's say it is 1 p.m. in the afternoon. In America, we will say 1, I don't write well, 00 p.m. If it's 1 in the morning, we will say a.m. Okay? And if you go 10 p.m., then at night it's 10 o'clock p.m. or a.m. if it's in the morning. Okay, so that is how we do it. But with the 24-hour clock, what you do is 24 hours. At midnight is 0000. You'll note I did not put a colon in there. You don't. But let's say it's 1 minute after midnight, it's 0001. No colon. And as a result, you just keep adding all the way around until you come to 12 noon. At 12 noon, it is 1200, like that. But you come to 1 o'clock, what do? You add an hour, it makes it 13. So 1 o'clock is 1300. And you say 1300 or 1320. If it's 1:20, you make it 1320. So as a result, that's what you do all the way up. 10 o'clock is 2200, because you keep adding hours from 12 to 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, till you get to 24. When you get to 24 at midnight, it goes to 00. So that will give you an idea, so you won't be totally stunned with what's happening when you go to most of the countries in the world. And your plane tickets, when you get the itinerary, many of them will have the 24-hour clock time on them. So brush up on it if you don't know it really well. Okay. There's now we need to talk about weather and climate. They are not the same thing. Climate is made up of a bunch of weather. Weather is what's happening this very minute. It's 92 degrees, slight breeze, and in another 2 hours, it could be raining and maybe 75 degrees. So a bunch of weather is accumulating on and on will form climate. But they don't just do every day. They take periods of time, like in the summer, it will be hot and dry, maybe not rain much. And the winter will be colder and maybe snow or rain. And so a bunch of time. And they give different names to the climate. And so make sure if you're calling a hotel or something, what is your climate there? Make sure they know what you're talking about. And you know, maybe you mean weather. What's the weather right now? Because the climate's an accumulation of a bunch of weathers. Okay. So that is much of the destinations. Oh, I do want to cover about clothing. Many parts of the world are very formal, such as the Muslim countries. You can't wear what you wear here. Some countries require the women to wear the scarves around their heads and on their shoulders. Some require the women cannot show any of their legs. They must wear long pants under their skirts or whatever they're wearing, dresses. They cannot show any skin, even long sleeves. Some are much more liberal. Then you have some like much of Europe and the US, you wear whatever you want, basically. So it's important that you worry about clothing. Now, when I travel, even if it's to a warm area, when the sun goes down, even in warm weather, it can drop 20 degrees. So it could be 95 degrees, and that night it could be 55, 61, 52. And you're out in it, it can be quite cool. So I take a light sweater or a long sleeve shirt to wear at night if I'm going to be out. You'll also want that if you're going to be where there's mosquitoes, particularly in the malaria countries. And that's one thing you'll check if you're going to parts of Africa, West Africa, so the southwest part of the West Africa. You know, you're going to this part of Africa, you need to check about malaria. If you're going through this part, you should check about malaria. Over in here, all the tropics, you should see what the malaria is and what they recommend if you take the medication to help prevent it. But it doesn't mean you won't get it. You can take it and get it. But usually if you get it, it's not as bad. Malaria is a horrible disease. It kills a lot of people. But nowadays, we can take medication and cure it, or at least make it better. So these are the basics of the geography, the weather, the climate of the world. I do want to mention one thing that about windward that I was going to mention earlier. You've heard the terms windward and leeward or leeward. It's really pronounced leeward. Okay, windward and leeward. Windward is the side of the mountain that the wind hits, and leeward is the other side of the mountain. Now, if you have a mountain, and I don't mean a 50-foot hill, I mean, maybe 1,000 feet or more, maybe more. The windward side is going to be greener than the leeward side because the rain drops as it goes up because it gets cooler. Remember the lapse rate as you go. Like if the mountain is 10,000 feet, and well, if any of you live in California or anywhere, you'll know like the Sierra Nevada mountains, the west side of it is green, beautiful. You go over the mountain, you start going to Reno, and it's a dry desert. It never rains very often. It's not green because it dropped all of the rain because it got colder and colder as it went up the 10,000 feet, and it just drops the rain. That is very true in like Washington. Well, take Europe for example. Washington State, I was going to say, the west side of the mountains, green and beautiful. The other side is more deserty, dry. You have to water your plants. Now, this is interesting here. Let's go to Europe. I don't know if any of you thought about it, but you've heard of the Alps. The Alps go along right about here. They cover the part of this area. Now, the Alps happen to go sort of north-south. I mean, east-west. Europe is crooked, so I never know direction. But they go this way. Now, what happens if you've ever driven from France into Italy or Switzerland, you'll start to see where it's green and beautiful. Really nice. That's why Switzerland's so beautiful, all those mountains. And then it's coming down here. It's cold air. There's the same thing. There's warm here. It gets up there, gets cold, and comes barreling across here, and it's cold, bangs into the mountains over here, and it's picked up all this moisture. And if it's a summer, it will bang into the Alps, which are going this way, and north, east, west, I guess you would say. That sort of northeast, southwest, this way. It bangs into it, and because they're so high, it rains and gets rid of all the moisture as snow or water. Now, then you cross over, and you get down into about just past Milan, and you go down here, and it's a desert. I mean, Rome is very dry. You come on down here, Sicily, the Boot, all this of Italy, it's a desert. You come over here to Athens, Greece, the whole place is dry because there's no moisture coming in. No moisture is all dumped in the Alps. And so you'll note that along this part of Africa, along the coast for a while, there's some hills over there. And these hills are high enough that it gains water crossing the Mediterranean, and it will hit those mountains and it'll rain. They have wonderful farms in some of these areas right along the water. And then it gets over it, and then you have the Sahara Desert. So mountains play an important part. So if you go to the Caribbean, and you think of the Caribbean as this lush and tropical waterfalls, absolutely beautiful, that is true, but it's not true for all islands. If you've ever been to the Cayman Islands, you'll say, what happened here? They're desert, they're dry, they're sandy. I won't say they're ugly, because they're not, but they're not green and lush and tropical. Like you can go to Jamaica, and Jamaica is the same situation as Europe with the Alps. Okay, let me draw a little thing here and show you what I mean. Okay, Jamaica, I guess we can turn it. Okay, Jamaica goes east-west. Jamaica looks like this. Okay, this is north, that's south, east and west. Now, here is Kingston, and here's Mobay and Ocho Rios. So you get an idea of what we're talking about, with the Blue Mountains going right through here. All right, now remember what direction does the air go, same as the water, in the northern hemisphere? Clockwise, right. So here's the water running around the Caribbean Sea, minding its business, going clockwise. And it goes over Jamaica, it hits these mountains, and it rains like mad. The north shore, north coast, where Kingston, Montego Bay and Ocho Rios and Port Antonio, all those things are on the north. So it's green and beautiful up there, waterfalls, the whole bit. You go over those mountains down to Kingston, and it's a desert. It's dry and ugly and hideous. But as you take the train between Kingston and Mobay, you can see it start getting really beautiful. And because there's a mountain range there. And the same everywhere there's mountains. You can even see it over here. There's mountains over here. It's green and beautiful and lovely over here. But as you start working over here, it's not as pretty until you hit some more mountains. But it's interesting. So just know if there's a mountain range somewhere near where you're going, and one side will be green because it's the windward side, and the other side will be dry, and it could be a desert, and that's the leeward side. On the next class, we'll be talking about the Americas. We'll start the Americas. And it will be very interesting to talk about North Central America and the Caribbean, because that's part of North America. Thank you very much for attending.